John Neely Kennedy's world unraveled when CNN broke the news. Senator Ted Cruz had filed an $80 million defamation lawsuit against him. The seasoned Louisiana senator, known for his folksy wit and unapologetically populist rhetoric, now faced the most serious legal threat of his decades-long career. Kennedy, who had spent years crafting a political identity rooted in plain talk and loyalty to working-class constituents, was no stranger to controversy, but nothing had prepared him for this. The plaintiff was no lightweight. Ted Cruz, the conservative firebrand and constitutional scholar from Texas, was not only a fierce political operator, but also a legal heavyweight, with degrees from Princeton and Harvard Law and a reputation for meticulous, strategic combat. A close ally of Donald Trump and a fixture on Fox News, Cruz brought the full force of his intellect and political reach to bear in a lawsuit aimed squarely at Kennedy's reputation, finances, and future in public life. The conflict began with a seemingly routine town hall-style live stream Kennedy hosted for his followers. During a fiery Q&A watched by over 200,000 viewers, a question arose about the repeated failure of environmental legislation in the Senate. Kennedy, gesturing passionately, accused Cruz of doing the bidding of oil conglomerates in Texas. He claimed Cruz had accepted illegal contributions and was selling out America's future for corporate cash. Kennedy even suggested Cruz should go ahead and rebrand himself as Senator ExxonMobil. The comments went viral. Social media lit up with hashtags like #ExposeCruz and #OilMoneyPolitics, while Kennedy's followers flooded the stream with comments like, "Call him out," and finally someone saying it. But what Kennedy saw as righteous political speech, Cruz interpreted as a malicious and baseless attack. Within 24 hours, Cruz's legal team filed the bombshell lawsuit, an $80 million defamation claim asserting that Kennedy's remarks were false, damaging, and made with reckless disregard for the truth. At first, Kennedy waved it off as political theater, calling it just another Republican temper tantrum. But he hadn't anticipated the carefully compiled evidence Cruz had amassed or the strategic brilliance behind the legal maneuver. This wasn't just a public spat. It was a battle between two political heavyweights. One had built his career through colorful speeches and down-home charm, the other through courtroom precision and ideological warfare. Senator Kennedy's populist energy plan, aimed at expanding job opportunities while securing American energy independence, had already made him a target for liberal critics and climate activists across multiple platforms. His confident, down-to-earth communication style and strong grassroots connection had turned him into a folk hero in conservative circles. To him, the live stream rant against Cruz felt like another routine jab at Washington elites, certainly not a career-altering misstep. He never imagined his offhand remarks would land him in federal court, facing an $80 million defamation claim. Meanwhile, in Texas, Senator Ted Cruz followed the unfolding controversy with cold, calculating precision. With decades of legal experience, including clerking for Chief Justice Rehnquist and arguing cases before the Supreme Court, Cruz recognized instantly that this wasn't just political banter. Seated in his Houston office, Cruz watched the live stream clip of Kennedy's accusations on his iPad, absorbing every word like a prosecutor preparing a case. As a former Solicitor General of Texas and a fierce defender of conservative principles, Cruz had built his brand on being relentless, articulate, and legally airtight. The next day, he appeared at a press conference outside a Houston energy facility, surrounded by oil workers and energy executives in hard hats, a backdrop that spoke volumes about his political message. Dressed in jeans and a blazer, he addressed the cameras. "This isn't about politics. This is about truth. And I intend to clear my name through the legal system, not Twitter." The media firestorm was immediate. Fox News ran with Kennedy faces lawsuit for defaming Cruz on oil money claims, while MSNBC framed the story as a battle over free speech and political discourse. Kennedy, for his part, responded with characteristic bite on social media. "These lawsuits are how the elite silence working-class truth-tellers. I won't be bullied by some Ivy League lawyer in cowboy boots." But behind closed doors, the tone was different. Days after Cruz's press appearance, his legal team filed a detailed 60-page complaint in federal court. It alleged that Kennedy's claims were not only false, but knowingly false. designed to destroy Cruz's reputation and derail his legislative efforts. The centerpiece of Cruz's case? A leaked internal email from Kennedy's own staff. Unlike Kennedy's bombastic media style, Cruz's strategy was surgical. He understood that winning a defamation case against a public official required proving actual malice, that the defendant knowingly spread falsehoods or acted with reckless disregard for the truth. The email, obtained through a whistleblower, gave him exactly what he needed. In the message to a communications advisor, Kennedy wrote, "Cruz blocks every green energy bill that crosses his desk. We need to expose him, make people see who he really serves, even if we need to stretch the truth a little." That phrase, "even if we need to stretch the truth a little," was dynamite. It shifted the case from a matter of opinion into potentially willful deception, and it instantly became the foundation of Cruz's legal assault. "We need to discredit him before he causes further environmental damage," Kennedy had written in a leaked staff email. But it was the next line that detonated Cruz's legal case. "Find any information, true or not, to demonstrate he's betraying Texas voters." The phrase "true or not" became the most devastating piece of evidence in Cruz's legal arsenal. A smoking gun suggesting malicious intent, the cornerstone of any successful defamation claim. When the lawsuit's contents were made public, media coverage surged. Conservative outlets pounced, labeling Kennedy a fraud finally exposed. Even more centrist networks like CNN and MSNBC adopted cautious tones, with one CNN legal analyst remarking, "If this email is authentic, Kennedy is in serious legal jeopardy." The phrase "true or not" cut straight to actual malice, which is what Cruz's team needs to prove. Inside Kennedy's Capitol Hill office, pressure mounted rapidly. What started as a fiery but typical live stream was now threatening to implode his entire career. The leaked email had caught him completely off guard, blindsiding his staff and leaving him exposed from multiple directions. In an emergency strategy session, Kennedy gathered his senior advisors. Tensions flared. Some urged him to issue a public apology, acknowledge the misstep, and seek a quiet settlement. But Kennedy, in characteristically defiant fashion, rejected retreat. Instead, he fired off a long-winded Twitter thread defending his actions. He claimed the email had been selectively edited and cynically weaponized by Cruz and his allies to destroy his reputation. This lawsuit isn't about truth. It's about silencing criticism of money and politics. "I won't be intimidated by billionaire-backed lawsuits." His supporters rallied in the thousands, flooding his mentions with messages of encouragement. But the backlash grew just as fast. Legal experts on both sides of the aisle called out his approach as reckless. "He's digging himself deeper," said a former federal prosecutor on MSNBC. "He's giving Cruz's team even more evidence to establish intent and recklessness." Meanwhile, Ted Cruz remained measured and strategic. He attended town halls and appeared at civic events, projecting calm resolve while focusing on a singular message: accountability. "I have no personal animosity towards Senator Kennedy," Cruz said at an Austin manufacturing facility. "But when someone with a national platform spreads knowingly false and damaging claims, the only responsible action is to pursue justice." Back in Kennedy's office, morale collapsed. The once vibrant walls plastered with campaign posters and Louisiana memorabilia now felt hollow. The staff avoided eye contact. What had once been a powerhouse of populist energy now echoed with silence and doubt. Kennedy, who had long styled himself as an unshakable voice for the working class, sensed the tide turning against him. But the most painful wounds didn't come from Cruz or the media. They came from within his own party. He had expected unwavering support from fellow conservatives, especially those who had stood by him in past partisan brawls. This time, however, the response was chillingly quiet. Party leaders kept their distance. Colleagues avoided comment. Even longtime allies began to detach themselves from the controversy. During a closed-door Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee meeting, where Kennedy had once held significant influence, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell addressed the lawsuit with a deliberately neutral tone, stating only, "We need to remain focused on advancing our legislative priorities." Reporters pressed Speaker Mike Johnson for comment, but he offered only, "This matter will proceed through appropriate legal channels." That carefully measured silence hit Kennedy hard. The message was clear. He was no longer seen as a political asset. He had become a liability. Even longtime conservative allies began to quietly back away. Senators who had previously praised Kennedy's down-home wisdom and media savvy went silent. Former supporters who once campaigned beside him now avoided the press entirely. Senator Josh Hawley, a close ideological ally, issued only a brief statement. Political speech must be rooted in facts and handled with care, pointedly omitting any direct defense. Senator Marsha Blackburn tweeted vaguely about unity on the right without once mentioning Kennedy by name. And Representative Jim Jordan, when approached by reporters, refused to answer questions about the case during a rally in Ohio. These small but unmistakable acts of distancing created a crushing sense of abandonment that Kennedy had never felt before. His rise had been rapid and his style magnetic. But in this moment of crisis, the silence was deafening. On social media, once his safe haven, Kennedy's support fractured. Conservative influencers who had once celebrated his biting one-liners and media savvy now split into rival factions. Some insisted the lawsuit was overblown, a political stunt to silence an anti-establishment voice. But others, particularly younger online voices with large TikTok and YouTube followings, began calling out his recklessness. One viral video, viewed over 2 million times, broke down the leaked email and asked, "Kennedy built his brand on being authentic, but why would someone like that greenlight something this damaging to his own cause?" The comments stung. He needs to take responsibility. This is political arrogance at its worst. Kennedy tried to seize back control the only way he knew how, going live again. In a video broadcast from his Washington apartment, standing in front of a shelf filled with biographies and conservative classics, wearing a LSU ball cap and rolled-up sleeves, he attempted to rally his base with the defiance he was known for. This lawsuit isn't about justice, it's about silencing dissent. Ted Cruz and his lawyers don't want accountability. They want obedience. I won't give it to them. But this time the chat wasn't a stream of praise and virtual applause. "Do you have proof of Cruz's oil money ties?" one user asked. "Why not apologize and end this mess?" another wrote. While his most loyal followers still offered encouragement, the overall tone had changed. Doubt had seeped into the digital space that once idolized him, and it didn't stop at the public. Inside Kennedy's own political operation, staff cohesion began to crumble. Several key aides who had been with him since his state treasurer days started expressing concern behind the scenes. Some even leaked details to the press, telling reporters that they had warned him not to make unsubstantiated allegations during the live stream. But he had dismissed their advice. He thought his charm and social capital could override the fallout, said one communications aide anonymously. "We advise caution." He chose confrontation. A senior communications aide leaked damaging information to reporters, claiming that Kennedy had been explicitly warned by his team not to make the allegations against Cruz without hard evidence. "We advise caution regarding the specifics," the aide told Politico anonymously, but he dismissed the risks. He believed his media presence would shield him. That quote quickly gained traction in outlets like The Hill and Politico, reinforcing a narrative that Kennedy had ignored expert advice in favor of spectacle. The internal leak further fractured morale and tightened the pressure on his already fragile public position. Meanwhile, Senator Cruz's legal team moved with deliberate force. Their methodical case-building paid off with a major victory. A federal judge denied Kennedy's motion to dismiss the lawsuit. In a detailed 12-page opinion, the court ruled that the leaked email and staff communications provided sufficient preliminary evidence of actual malice to justify trial proceedings. Conservative media seized on the decision. "Court delivers devastating blow to Kennedy," read a headline on Fox News. "Cruz moves closer to legal victory over reckless allegations," declared the Daily Wire. A Fox commentator summarized the moment. "Cruz isn't just winning in court, he's teaching the political class a masterclass in how accountability should work in public life." As Cruz's stature soared, invitations poured in from major conservative gatherings, CPAC, Turning Point USA summits, and energy industry fundraisers. At each, he was greeted not just as a legal victor, but as a defender of truth against political smear tactics. In a widely covered interview with Sean Hannity, Cruz shared his journey from Princeton and Harvard Law to the U.S. Senate. He framed the lawsuit as part of a broader fight for integrity in modern politics. "This isn't just about me. It's about drawing the line when falsehoods go unchecked. You can't call it free speech when it's designed to destroy lives." Republican leaders quickly lined up in support. Senator Tom Cotton praised Cruz as a legal warrior defending personal honor. Josh Hawley called the lawsuit a turning point in how conservatives respond to targeted slander. The contrast between the two senators couldn't have been starker. As Cruz calmly built momentum through discipline and strategy, Kennedy appeared increasingly disorganized, combative, and emotionally reactive. He lashed out on social media, doubling down on his claims and accusing Cruz of weaponizing the courts. Cruz, by contrast, remained focused, rarely engaging Kennedy by name, and instead emphasizing broader themes of justice and consequence. This positioning elevated his credibility even among moderates. National Review captured it best. "Cruz is playing chess while Kennedy's stuck in checkers. His downfall began with a single misjudgment, and Cruz never let up." While Cruz stood before cheering crowds, Kennedy was drowning in a sea of headlines, press requests, and legal anxieties. The momentum had fully turned. Each morning brought more alerts, fewer from loyal followers, more from panicked advisors and scandal-hungry journalists. Once favorable coverage evaporated. Conservative outlets branded him a reckless liar exposed. Even the New York Times and Washington Post, typically critical of Cruz, ran pieces titled, "Kennedy's Crisis, How Not to Survive a Defamation Lawsuit," when populist performance backfires. On TikTok, where Kennedy's one-liners had once gone viral, new videos now mocked him relentlessly. One clip, overlaying his infamous live stream with cartoon explosions, was captioned, "When your mouth moves faster than your legal team." The video racked up 20 million views in days. "When your superhero delusions self-destruct." That was the caption on a viral TikTok video mocking Kennedy's live stream meltdown. It racked up over 20 million views within days. Alone in his Washington apartment, Kennedy spent sleepless nights scrolling through Twitter, searching for signs of support, clinging to fragments of encouragement. But the torrent of criticism cut deeper than he expected. The people he believed would stand by him, grassroots conservatives, populist influencers, small-town voters, now seemed to vanish into silence or turn on him altogether. One comment on Instagram, posted under a photo from a past campaign rally, haunted him. "You were supposed to fight for us. Now all we see is a man who shoots his mouth off and blames others for the fallout." It wasn't the pundits or the political rivals that hurt most. It was that, anonymous, personal, and real. The pressure wasn't just online, it crept into his personal life. In his hometown of Zachary, Louisiana, his family became a target of tabloid reporters and local gossip. Paparazzi set up outside his mother's home. Curtains stayed drawn all day. To protect his loved ones, Kennedy had to hire private security, a costly but necessary move. Meanwhile, the legal fees were spiraling. Within weeks, Kennedy's legal expenses had surpassed $1.5 million. His fundraising dried up, and political donors kept their distance. Quietly, he sold his Washington condo, downsizing to a modest rental, an emotionally brutal step for someone who had symbolized grit and upward mobility. His financial advisors delivered even worse news. If the court ruled against him for even a fraction of the $80 million Cruz sought, personal bankruptcy was inevitable. Everything he had built, his career, legacy, even retirement, was on the line. In rare private moments of reflection, Kennedy confronted the truth. He had drastically underestimated Cruz, not just his legal strength, but his patience and precision. He had assumed public sympathy, a loyal base, and social media swagger would be enough. He was wrong. Apologizing crossed his mind more than once. A formal retraction might have softened the blow. But pride and his own stubborn belief in the righteousness of his words kept him from crossing that line. To ease the political pressure from Republican leadership and avoid becoming a distraction to party messaging, Kennedy ultimately made the painful choice to step down from his committee leadership role in the Senate Energy Committee. He announced it quietly via a single Instagram post. "I need to focus on serving the people of Louisiana while managing these legal matters. My priorities haven't changed." But the political world read it differently. Analysts across outlets called it the unofficial end of Kennedy's influence in the Senate. He remained in office, but the glow was gone. His charisma now shadowed by controversy. The lawsuit had redefined him, not just as a senator in crisis, but as a warning. Across the political spectrum, his downfall sent ripples. Young conservatives, once inspired by Kennedy's brash authenticity, grew more cautious. Social media teams inside congressional offices began scrubbing old tweets. Party strategists started quietly discouraging livestream rants without prior legal review. In a statement to The Intercept, one conservative digital organizer put it plainly: "Kennedy used to represent the future. Now he's the cautionary tale. Say what you want, sure, but you better make damn sure it's true." Meanwhile, Cruz experienced an unprecedented political resurgence. The defamation lawsuit, originally a personal defense, had now elevated his national stature. Among Republican voters, Cruz was hailed as a symbol of resistance to progressive cancel culture, a conservative figure who fought back not with outrage, but with law, discipline, and results. He became a featured speaker at CPAC, Turning Point USA summits, and elite GOP fundraisers across Texas and Florida, raising millions for Republican campaigns. A Wall Street Journal column remarked, "Cruz has turned a defamation lawsuit into one of the most effective political tools of the decade, proving conservatives don't need to match the left's social media firepower to win." In Louisiana, oil industry workers, the original targets of Kennedy's livestream, celebrated Cruz as a defender of their jobs and dignity. Refineries flew American flags beside signs that read, "Stand with Cruz." The Kennedy Cruz lawsuit had become more than a legal battle. It embodied the deeper ideological war dividing the country: progressivism versus conservatism, social media megaphones versus institutional processes, emotion-driven rhetoric versus strategic precision. Political observers warned the lawsuit had a dark side too. The spectacle of two elected officials suing each other over political speech raised uncomfortable questions about the health of democratic discourse. A New Yorker editorial cautioned, "When political disagreements become courtroom combat, we risk destroying the space where debate, not litigation, should define public policy." Even as Cruz emerged victorious, some voters feared what the victory represented: the legal weaponization of political disagreement. More tangibly, the lawsuit sent shockwaves through Capitol Hill. Members of Congress across both parties tightened their media policies. Spontaneous tweets and live-stream rants became rare. Staffers began routing all digital communications through legal review before publication. One Washington PR firm reported a 30% spike in demand for social media risk assessments among congressional offices. "No one wants to be the next Kennedy," said an anonymous Democratic senator to Politico. International coverage reflected the case's global impact. European newspapers described it as proof of the deterioration of civil political debate in the US, where disagreements now end in lawsuits rather than legislation. A British columnist wrote, "When public discourse collapses into personal litigation, democracy itself starts to buckle." In Latin America, where Kennedy had once inspired young reformers, reactions were even more personal. A Brazilian organizer told El País, "We admired Kennedy's courage to speak plainly, but now he's a reminder that words carry weight and can bury the people who use them carelessly." The $80 million lawsuit reshaped American politics. It served as a brutal reminder that in the digital age, a single moment, a single sentence, or a single email can collapse years of political credibility. Kennedy's fall demonstrated that viral influence doesn't equal legal immunity. Cruz's win proved that measured, strategic response can overpower performance-driven outrage. More than anything, the confrontation reflected the fragile balance America is still trying to strike between freedom of expression and responsibility of communication. In a world where every statement can be recorded, replayed, and weaponized, the lesson is simple: know what you're saying and know what it might cost.